But the thing is, like, as a planner and working all these weddings, things are guaranteed to happen. I expect it. I find it weird if something goes perfect, but
Yeah.
it's always minor, and my job is to hide it so everyone thinks that everything goes smoothly.
Three, two, one, yeah!
After leaving the corporate 9 to 5 grind, I became the boss of my own spiritual business, helping others explore and navigate the human experience from insight, wisdom, and lessons learned along the way. Today, I help aspiring spiritual entrepreneurs gain the confidence to share their gifts with the world. Welcome to the Happy Healing Shop podcast. I'm your host, Trang Pham Nguyen, and each week we'll dive into incredible stories of strength, resilience, and transformation. So, if you are ready for some serious breakthroughs, laughs and tears, and stories that will inspire you, you are in the right place, my friend. Let's get started.
Hey, so today I have a special episode for Valentine's Day. And as you know, I work in the wedding industry, and I figured this would be a little twist on Valentine's Day because we get to talk to people that work behind the scenes and see what it is like working with couples and maybe our views on love as a result. So today I have Angela, my assistant, who will be interviewing me as a wedding planner, and also Missy, a wedding photographer based in LA.
So, question for the both of you is how did you get started working in the wedding industry?
Well, actually, I've always done events in general. So I started off in college doing like festivals or like arts and crafts night. And then one day I was a maid of honor for my friend's wedding, and I pretty much did everything. And that's when I realized, is this what a wedding planner does? I went like above and beyond. And and that's how it started. And then eventually with the next wedding, my first wedding actually was a friend's, and they hired me on, and I'm forever grateful for that because that's how honestly it just the ball got started rolling, and that's how it happened. And each year you just grow and grow more and more. So that's how it happened.
So I started as a self-portrait artist in my 20s. So I just, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was out of college. It was like I have an English degree. What am I going to do? And like I realized like I probably won't make any money being a self-portrait artist. So I was like, well, I have all this camera gear. So I just turned it around. It was in my late 20s. So all of my friends were starting to get married, and I just kind of started by shooting friends' weddings and then just like slowly going from there. I'd never been to a wedding actually before I shot my first wedding. I've only been to like 3 weddings as a guest. So
Wow.
yeah.
Were you nervous at all when you started doing it?
It's weird. No, it's really strange because I do have like severe social anxiety. Like it's ridiculous. And something about weddings just like takes that away. And I don't know, it's always been that way for me. And I think it's just being able to hide and like make art out of other people's lives. So I don't know.
So that's like a key here is I feel like not to get into the wedding industry, but something common, not just from you two, but other people that I've heard is it starts at a friend's wedding
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
kind of snowballs from there.
yeah.
Next question. What are some common misconceptions that couples have about the wedding planning process or photography process?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a list.
An endless list of misconceptions.
Oh, yeah. I think they think we just show up and that's it, and they're paying for only like the 10 or 12 hours. Or I know like people might say, "Oh, with a photographer, you're just taking photos. You're just clicking a button." I think, okay, for me, what comes up a lot of times is people wanting to do DIY. I'm not a fan of DIY because they're like, oh, my friends or my family can help set up and that kind of stuff. But from my experience, either one, they don't show up or they show up really late. And anything that doesn't go, I'm a fan for hiring professionals because they're legally contracted to show up on time. They know set up and clean up, and you don't have to worry about it. But, at the end of the day, when they're like, "So and so can take this home for me, blah, blah, blah." like people forget that at the end of the night, people are either tired or drunk and they just kind of go home. And so I've been stuck sometimes with things that I have to take in my car. So those are times where I go like this really, um, I would say, I guess you could say breach the contract, but it really, I end up doing more than what I really should be doing.
Yeah, I do too. I do that too.
Yeah, I feel like if
Yeah,
there's no wedding coordinator, then they're gonna use a vendor, like a photographer or videographer to be like, "Oh, can you direct us where to go?" and all that stuff, and it's not their job.
yeah, that's definitely like it's not just me. It's like if they're giving that job to anyone else, especially like a friend or a family member, I feel like that's, you want to have your guests there, to like enjoy your wedding and like, but instead they're like being the DJ. It's unless that's like really what they want to do, but a lot of the time they just kind of get stuck doing all this stuff and then it's all disconnected, having a planner there, like it allows for everybody to relax and like do
Yes.
what they should be, doing, enjoying everything. Um, yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah,
Ugh. It's so hard because, like, when I say at least a day of coordinator, it's not mainly to just sell my services, but it's more of like, if you want your guests to enjoy and not like, your guests aren't gonna tell them the guests don't usually tell the bride and groom, like, "Hey, for your wedding, it kinda sucked because we had to work and we didn't get to enjoy the party."
yeah,
They're
yeah,
not gonna say that.
exactly. And then like another misconception that like people have about photography is like that the cost is just like us just showing up and taking pictures and like it's like the cost is like the gear, the continued education, the software, the storage, the upgrading of the gear, the time spent editing. There's like 3 to 4 hours of editing per hour of photography. And then also like expertise in the wedding industry and with weddings themselves and like the proven ability to pivot when things get crazy. That's kind of what you're paying for with a photographer. So I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions I wanted to shed some light on. I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to photography and videography too, is they're like, you're just here taking pictures and then you send them to me.
Yeah.
But the editing, I mean, that's hours and hours of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really like it's a I feel like editing for me is like a huge deal because it shows the style of everything. It really, it tells the whole story. So
Okay.
Missy, what is something you don't like to do at weddings? Like, you wish it didn't exist or you didn't have to do it?
Table shots.
And can you
I hate
elaborate
table
for
shots.
me and everybody else who doesn't know what that is?
So usually, like, so a lot of the time,
I
like,
hate table shots too.
oh
Oh
my
my
gosh. Okay,
gosh.
so a couple will be like, it's sort of like they feel like they need to take a picture with everyone who's there. So we'll
Oh,
go around
They go
during
table to
dinner
table.
and go
gotcha.
table to table and take pictures, like a giant picture of everyone at the table, which I just think is, I mean, it's usually ugly, like they're just standing around. There's like food scattered everywhere. There's like drinks spilled on the table, and it's like, it's just not a good scene. But there is this trend that's happening that I'm so on board with, where people will like, they'll play a song and they basically have to go from table to table and like what like oh this one that I did, they had like each table had a movie, like a movie that they had like a card that said the movie on it, and they had to um like act out something from that movie for the photo. So we had somebody doing like, they had the Lion King, so they were holding someone up in the air as if he was Simba,
Oh
and
my God.
everybody was just like, and the photo is just incredible. So like being able to kind of twist on things that kind of suck is really, that is the way to go. If you feel like you have to do it fun.
Oh, that's a good point. Do it fun. I think I love it when there's games involved because as a guest, as a wedding guest, you're just like sitting there, you're kind of eating and kind of bored sometimes, especially if there's
Yeah.
people at the table you don't know. But yeah, I like what so table shots, it's just so posed and you're just like that. It's table to table. And I
Yeah.
don't know if brides and grooms look at those photos like 5 years down the road being like, oh my gosh. And they're not, like you said, they're not cute. And logistically, I hate them. It takes up a
Yeah.
like because it cuts into their eating time, and I'm trying to get the
Yeah.
bride and groom to eat, and then I'm like,
Eat.
okay, because of that, now we have to rush and then go do like shots at each table. And if it's like
And
I've
those
done,
table shots, they take, yeah. Sorry.
yeah, I've done 3 to 400 people weddings, so that's 30 to 40 round tables. And sometimes I've had most clients are always like, okay, I just don't want to do any more than 30 minutes of this. And it's again that thing where I'm like, it's going to be longer than 30 minutes because,
Yeah.
some grandpa or some uncle that's going to give you a lot of money is like making a speech at the table. And it's like finding a balance of moving people on like to the next table, but at the same time respecting and not being rude of being like, okay, I'm going to cut you off
Smart.
now. Like we got to get going.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
usually my job. My job is to like keep that moving along a lot of the time. And I'm just like,
if there's no
I don't
planner.
want it. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
if the planner's doing something else, because at that point it's like dinner, and sometimes the planner has either like left, which is crazy, or they're doing other things. They're just
Yeah.
like letting them do this.
Yeah, that's insane when I think planners, they do like there's some that just only stay for 8 hours and then they just leave and they're done. And they're not there for cleanup and stuff like that, but that is their contract, and
Yeah.
you're still paying a lot of money for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one thing I learned like in the wedding industry. There's people that are some of them are pricey or but there's some people that should not be working in the wedding industry. It's just like any other coworker where you're like, oh man,
Well,
you're
they're just
not
doing it for the
great.
money. They're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
And
It's
it
like you can tell when your vendor is doing it because they love it instead of just
Mhm.
like, yeah.
Yeah. They're just more
So,
they add, like, an extra touch to it, or even, like, if someone F's up, a vendor F's up, I'm the one that has to fix it, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's,
You're
like,
in
extra
control.
work of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good chat. So that's what table shots are, Ange.
Thank
Yes.
you. What advice do you both have for couples who might be on a tight budget, but they still want to have a great wedding?
Everyone wants a nice wedding on a budget,
I
and
do.
that's really hard to do, because everything costs a lot, but also you're paying professionals, right?
Mhm.
I say I s it's hard because I can offer professional advice, but a lot of times I feel like the bride and groom, usually the bride has such like a strong vision ever since they were for years that it's really hard to get them to that point where they're willing to budge until we start talking about money or they're like, "Oh, okay, everyone wants all these lush flowers." And then when they find out it costs $50,000, you're gonna be like, "Just kidding, my budget's only 10 grand," and or something for flowers, right? So I think if you get a decently pretty place, you don't have to do a lot of decor. Even like especially if you're doing family style, I'm like, you don't even need decor on the table because once once you have the flowers on there, then they're gonna within 15 minutes they're gonna take it off because they need to put the food on. So that to me is such a huge waste of money, right? Um, some people do micro weddings, especially since the pandemic. Uh, Try to find a venue that maybe is a bit more budget friendly because venues, I think from invoices I've seen, contracts I've seen, venues and caterers are the two things that are going to eat up so much of your budget. Um, and for when it comes to wedding planning, instead of doing a full planner, you can hire a day of coordinator. Really, we come like 2 months ahead of before your wedding. I don't know about photo packages or maybe like if there's like vendors like bartenders or something like that, you can always have, like, less hours, but, sometimes they need time to set up and stuff like that, so it's kinda hard to budge too.
Yeah, for photos, I would say there you can do it like based on some people will do like a little smaller hourly packages, or if you're having a small like I guess if you're on a budget, you might have a smaller wedding. And then for me, I do charge a little bit less for people for weddings when there's less than 75 people because I'm gonna take less photos, like I'm not going to take a million photos of one person just standing there talking to someone else, like it's so I think having a smaller wedding is definitely gonna help a budget. The other thing is some photographers will do like small discounts for I'm saying like there's not many discounts you'll get from photographers. Like it's a really big point of contention. But if you have a winter wedding, you might be able to get like a small discount for that. So
Gotcha. Now, have either of you ever had to handle disagreements between couples during the planning process?
Yeah, a little bit,
I
usually they
don't
talk offline for me.
yeah, I don't think I've seen disagreements I don't think I've seen too many disagreements. I feel like they're usually there to like just like take pictures with me. Like, you know, they're usually the disagreements might be like, like how they're holding hands. Yeah, it's very small.
Good.
Yeah, yeah, I don't get to see that very much, but
That's true, yeah. Um, sometimes in meetings, and I try to move the meeting along where they'll sit there and be like, "Well, who should walk first down the aisle?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is something you guys could figure out later on." I don't say it like that, but um, especially when it's hard because with weddings, there's also like family politics too. So, and whoever pays for the wedding, let's say the parents pay for the wedding, so you have to factor that in as well. But usually they don't no one has blown up in um, a meeting with me. I have heard from venues where they've had the bride and groom come, and usually maybe the parents come because they're paying for the wedding. And yes, they've had like crying meltdowns and stuff like that.
oh
Yeah.
oh man, I don't
I
know what
know.
I believe
so,
it. Stress is high and yeah.
yeah, it is high. Yeah,
Yep.
it's like one of the high stress things to be planning for people, I think.
Yeah. So for Trang, what's something you don't like about weddings compared to the other events that you work? And then for Missy, you can compare that to like when you used to do self portraits and whatnot.
Yeah, I do other events as well, so
Oh, do you? Okay.
I think Missy and I we talked about this once. But weddings they're fun. It's celebration. There's culture involved and like traditions and things like that. But like we just talked about, it's really high stress because it is like that one perfect day for them. That goes by really fast. Whereas like if you're doing a conference, I've worked conventions and stuff, it's business. It's business. They have a budget. They're really straightforward. It's usually more dry for me, a bit more, I'm gonna say boring, but it's pretty straightforward. So that's like the perk of it, but it's different for weddings. So like weddings is definitely a more social event.
yeah. I think for me it's actually so my clients are super chill. I've never had a bridezilla or anything like that. But the drama of like certain like you'll see shitty family members kind of stirring stuff up and like I just want to body slam them and like I think that's what gets to me is when somebody's trying to ruin somebody else's day, like even a little bit. Like it's
Yeah.
just such a beautiful, joyful thing. And then when there's people around, idiot people who just decide to ruin things, that's like what. And nothing. I've never done anything that's like been totally like ruined, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's just drama that surrounding weddings.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the bride and groom are paying so much money. And, a lot of times I feel like the guests, they sometimes they are like expect somehow for them to cater to them.
Yeah.
And
They think it's
yeah.
supposed to be a certain way because that's how they've seen weddings before. And because I do
Yes.
more like offbeat weddings, like a lot more like, you know, things are not normal. And sometimes the guests get like weirded out, like, or like offended. It's like, this isn't about you. Like,
Yeah, I think people overthink things too. Like they're like, "Oh, aren't we supposed to do the cake cutting before this?" And I'm like, "It
doesn't,
what I really want to say is like it honestly doesn't matter. It's up to you. There's not like a rule that says like you got to do like a bouquet toss like before this time or the dance at this time. So it's funny because a lot of people they just get this in their heads thinking like, "Oh, aren't you supposed to do it?" Like there's no
rule.
really like hard rule on it. But I think a lot of people overthink things. It's their first time. Like if you see people that have been married the second, third, or fourth time, they're really chill because they know exactly what to expect. But I think it's because it's their first time. Like Missy, you and I, we've done weddings, so an event. So we've been exposed to it over and over again. So to us, we're like, okay, here's another thing, same similar timeline. We know what to expect. But other people, they're like, it's my first thing, and everyone's gonna watch me, you know. The
Yeah.
chillest some of the chillest couples are the ones that have been married already, and they're
Yeah.
having the party, like, a year later.
Yeah. And they have the right people surrounding them as well. Like a lot of the time, those weddings are smaller and they're filled with like people who are like just fucking rallying around them.
Have either of you ever had to deal with a situation where a guest or a vendor brought unexpected drama to a wedding?
Yeah.
Ooh, what happened?
I had a mother of a bride throw the bride's bouquet in the bride's face, and then she left. Um, and then for some reason, someone brought her back, and she gave this very super like godly speech during dinner, like just full of the Lord. And I'm just like, wow, I I had I had such a hard time taking pictures of her. Like, like it's one of those things where you want to like Photoshop her like looking like a monster.
Oh my gosh. That's terrible. Did they have a wedding coordinator? I would not.
No, no,
Oh,
no, they did not. They did not.
yeah.
No,
Okay.
like, the people who were trying to figure out like what to do after that all happened, it was just her brothers and like the family. So they were just all trying
Um,
to deal with it. It's like, I'm most like that's my like horror story. That's probably the worst thing that's happened, I think.
yeah. Oh, that's sad. Um, yeah, and I think the thing about people don't realize with wedding planners coordinators is that we also troubleshoot the day of. Like if something like that goes down, we don't
They
just plan the
had
wedding.
Yeah, if they'd had a planner, like that would have been discussed beforehand, I'm sure, because a lot of
Yeah.
the brides will be like, yeah, hey, listen, my mom's kind of trouble. And, like you kind of like seat them in specific areas or whatever. Like there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And if you don't have a planner, like, yeah.
Yeah. I haven't had anything drama wise, I think. Luckily, I've been whew. But I have, of course, when we work weddings, because we talk to other vendors and be like, how was it? Other weddings. And there's a bartender that told me once, like, oh yeah, they had a nice, beautiful wedding in Malibu, and the ex was invited to the wedding. And so, um, so the groom and him, this is when everyone's drunk. And that's the thing, people forget that people get drunk and you cannot control people when there's alcohol involved, really. And there was a full-on brawl at the end of the night. And so that was pretty that's probably that was like, wow. Um, I've also had, not me, but also another vendor say, oh, there was one where they're supposed to be walking down the aisle, but there was a bridesmaid and I think groomsmen getting it on in a bathroom. So they had to knock on the door and be like, hey, you guys need to get out of the bathroom because we need to get
Oh,
started. And they're like, oh, okay,
I think that's
we're almost
beautiful.
done.
Like, I hope that's
As a
their
planner, I would be
right.
like, not now. I need you to walk down the aisle.
And I'd be like,
So yeah, nothing personally for me, but other vendors I've heard.
Can you tell for the both of you when two people are getting married for the wrong reasons, or if you think it's not the right fit?
I mean, there's times when I'm just like, girl, what are you doing? No, no, not really my couples. That doesn't. I think sometimes you can tell. Like, actually, we talked about this the other day, is like you can
Mm.
kind of tell like a power imbalance.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
a lot of the time when it's like I don't want to be ageist, but a lot of the time when couples are younger and they haven't really figured out like how to, you know, be a team yet, kind of,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think part of, because I see the planning process, right? So I see how they communicate with each other. I also see how couples um make decisions, or if, like you said, Missy, they act as a team.
Yeah,
Um, but a lot of times I do see, I'm like, okay, so this person might wear the pants in a relationship,
yeah,
and end up making the decision. Sometimes, a lot of times, I'm like, I honestly could do this meeting with just one of you guys, because one person's really running the meeting, in terms of like the decisions and stuff like that. But they want their partner to just be there to be involved in it, when the other person's just really not paying attention to the
yeah,
meeting at all. But I think because they're about to get married, so we see kind of like the foundation a little bit of what they're going of how their relationship, their marriage is going to start, whether it's
mhm,
like a rocky foundation or like where you go like, oh, luckily I haven't had like any awful red flag clients
yeah,
at all. But also there's like a lot of things at play, right? Like, sometimes people stay for because of culture expectations or religious expectations, or if they have kids. I think when people have kids, that's when like a huge um stress comes into their life. And I'm like, if you guys can't communicate or you guys can't uh cope well with each other now, and you guys are kind of stressed with a plan, like, with a wedding, when you're done with the wedding planning, it's over, right? But with kids and other stresses in life, you can't, that doesn't go away after a year. Like, it's gonna really uproot your life a bit there.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, maybe like I can't say I can tell if they're gonna go into a divorce, but I don't know. What do you
But
think?
I feel like we can almost tell when they're not going to, though. Like, I feel like there's certain couples where you see them and you're just like, oh my God, that is so solid, you know? And
Yes, those
that's
are
the,
some of my favorite couples.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
see, like the way
Mm-hmm.
they are, like the way they touch each other, the way they like just are, just gravitate towards each other type thing. It's really cool. That's the best. That's,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like I don't say it's a vibe, but you can just tell you're like, I
You're like,
like
yeah,
you as a couple. You guys are great people, like solid couple. You could just tell.
yeah. And it is usually like they're older, right? Wait,
Yeah.
I didn't say, oh, right.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just like I had a couple that got married. They were in their 50s and it was their first marriage ever. And at that point, you're like, they're pretty solid.
They
Hmm.
work on themselves first. I think it's not so much the age as like you can
I
tell
think,
have worked on themselves individually and then they come together.
yeah. And I think like, with the 50s, the couple I did in their 50s, they just didn't care about what people think too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just about them. They just want to celebrate their love.
Yeah. Hmm. Yep.
So, some tips for couples from you guys. From your perspective, what's the most overlooked aspect of wedding planning and anything else that couples overlook?
Yeah, they probably underestimate how much planning actually goes into it. I think we touched on that earlier, is like not hiring a planner is like like that goes back to like they don't hire, overlooking how much they have to plan, and then just having to delegate and give all of the things for their family members to do, like clean up at the end of the night and things like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also pay so much attention, focus on like what the wedding looks like, and then they forget everything else. They forget about the valet, they forget
Yeah.
about they're like, "Oh, they pay attention to details, but the wrong details." I'm thinking.
Oh, like feed your vendors. That's one too.
Yeah, I think in the planning process, I kind of like not butt in, but I
That's
say like, "Oh, what are
we're
your I'm like, yeah, I'm like, okay, so you have 50 guests or, 100 guests, and plus how many vendors are you going to have for vendor meals? So it's kind of like that. I know sometimes people debate whether or not you look, the thing is you don't have to have vendor meals, but we got to find time to eat and walk away and eat then, if do you want us to go take a 1 hour break to try to find a place to eat? So it's just more convenient. It's also really hard to work 8 to 12, sometimes 15-hour days and not have a meal either.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing is like we're usually eating in the back, really scarfing to our meals and then going back to work. So,
Get
but
like
yeah,
5 minutes. That's all I need.
yeah. And so it's like you don't have to feed your vendors, but it is very long working days, especially with I would say the wedding planner, the photographer and videographer. We are our feet are
Like,
aching
oh,
at the end of the night. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Um, and I think speaking of what they pay too much or too little attention to, so they pay a lot of attention to just the aesthetics that they forget about how they want the wedding to feel. They get caught up in like making the wedding fun or making it feel guests want feel like an intimate experience, right? Also, a lot of people want to do 10 million things crunched in one day, and I have to sort of tactfully kind of be like, if you do everything back to back, you're gonna be so exhausted and you cannot enjoy it. You need
Yeah.
it's like for any event, not just weddings, you need time to breathe. Like you don't want when you're doing one of those like 12-course meals that are fancy, they don't bring 12 courses at once. They bring it one by one, and it's kind of spaced out strategically, right? So that way
Mm.
you have time to talk to each other, you have time to enjoy the meal, pair it with a wine, and then they move on to the next one. And so that's how I like to compare of like making the flow of a wedding. But it's really hard because a lot of times people are like, "I'm gonna do this, this, and this," and I'm like, "Okay," like I give them a warning, and sometimes it's hard because there are like traditions or customs they want to squeeze in or need to squeeze in. So, I offered my advice, but knowing that if they have a full packed day, they're just gonna be exhausted, and usually that's what happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also I think another thing is to, especially when it comes with catering or other things like that, to cushion for like an extra 30%. Like I wouldn't say hidden fees, but there's always like admin fees or taxes that pop up, and that's how you get over budget.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, I think, a lot of things that are overlooked with like photography as well, on the day, because we do need a little bit of time. So sometimes, if they don't have a planner again, they won't put in enough time, or they'll try to do too much. So like in Chicago, it was like we would go to like three different locations, but you have to think, okay, like what if there's a football game? Like that we cannot make it to these three locations in this much time when there is that amount of traffic. You really have to be careful about like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I had a client that was saying like, "Oh, we can go do this, the ceremony, and then we go here to another location for photos." And I remember being like, "I don't think there's gonna be enough time because it's a tight squeeze." And I think they were expecting photos to be just 20 minutes at like the location after the ceremony. And I was like, and in the end, I was right. There was no time for that, and we wound up going straight to the reception. And granted, the thing is, you can still take beautiful photos at your reception, or the photographer has an
Like,
eye and they can figure it
we're
out.
there, we're there to make the magic. So I've taken photos in 10 minutes in a parking lot before that looked amazing. Like you just have to make it work, like
And that's where you pay for the professional because they have an eye to make really quick decisions, right? And so people don't realize, like, they'll be like, "Oh, but it only takes 5 minutes to get there." I'm like, "No, no, no." First of all, after the ceremony, people are gonna grab you and want to talk to you, and they're gonna. So you can't just say like, "Bye, grandma," but I have to go for photos. You're gonna talk to them a little bit, and then it takes a while to walk to the car, get in the car, and then drive off, find parking. So something that takes 5 minutes really is going to take more like 20 minutes. And that's why
yeah,
I know like it's not, there are things we'll see where I'm like, it's not going to work. But if I have a more of like a stubborn client or someone that's really fixed on their vision, let's put it that way, um, then I say like, okay, fine. Like we'll have that on the timeline, but I know deep down, like it's not, I'll let it play out. And then that way, like what ends up happening is we go from ceremony straight to reception. But again, the photographer, I know they can work their magic. So I'm not
yeah,
worried about it.
You guys can take this question however you want it, but if there was one piece of advice that you could give a bride and groom for their actual wedding day of, what would it be?
drink water.
That's a good one.
Sounds so stupid, but it's like I get migraines, so like whatever. But if I don't drink enough water, I watch these couples, they talk and they smile the entire day. And I just like worry about them the whole time. I'm like, please, like, please keep drinking water. You're gonna be like so dead later. I know it's a dumb. There's more, there's better.
Good advice.
Not just like taking care of themselves, but also like I would want to tell people that they need to, it's so floofy, but like be present, obviously, like it's like I'm like sometimes I'll just like I'll see a bride kind of freaking out and just be like, feel your feet on the ground right now. This is where you are, like I think that's the main thing is like it goes by so fast. And
It goes by
especially
so fast.
there's so many moving parts that you've been worried about this whole time planning. And then like the day is there and you're just worried about logistics still, like that's another reason to have a planner. Have I said that every time I've had an answer is like, you must have a planner because they take care of that so you can enjoy your day. Like you need to be there.
If you look at contracts, of venues, vendors, it's so funny because when you see a little clause in there and you're like, huh, interesting, I wonder what happened. So at there's some venues where I'll read the contract, they'd be like, you must have a wedding coordinator, and I'm thinking, okay, they probably had so much of probably a shit show or
Yeah.
something like that happened to make them be like, okay, we can't do weddings without a wedding planner because it's too much trouble. Because sometimes it's a liability. Like if someone ruins the venue,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not great. Um, or sometimes I'll see a contract being like, we do not clean bodily fluids. And I'm like, wonder what happened there. And it's like vomiting from alcohol, right? So it's very funny when I see these sentences, or even like with the hair stylist and makeup artist, it says like, we only talk to the bride and the wedding planner only. And I was like, all right, there must
Yeah.
have been stuff must have gone down. Yeah.
Yeah. Some crazy moms.
And Trang, what's your one piece of advice if you could?
Oh, same as Missy. Like really take it in because it goes by. Everyone says it goes by so fast. And it's hard because everyone warns you that. But
Yeah.
um I think when it's like honestly your first wedding, it's like giving them professional advice, but I think it's hard for them to take it in the first time because there's so much going on. But I agree with Missy, like take time to look at your partner,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, just like
That's yeah,
look at each
like
other.
part of like just like taking photos together, though that for me is like a moment where I can like help them with that, like breathe together and look into
Yes.
each other's eyes type thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also feel like when I see a couple that does that in a wedding, those are some of the couples where I'm like, they're solid.
Yeah.
Just because they know to really savor the moments together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you guys seen any creative or unique ideas at weddings?
I've seen so many things.
Something
um,
like way
Yeah.
out of the ordinary that you don't see very often?
yeah, so I shot a cosplay wedding once.
Wow.
Um, it was actually really amazing because it was a Hindu Jewish fusion. So, you know, that was like also already incredible. And then they were like, hey, let's have our wedding at the planetarium in Chicago and like just have our friends all dress up in cosplay. And I got to as well. I got to dress up. I was Tank Girl. So that was like pretty much, I think that was the most creative wedding I've done. I've done some really cool stuff though.
Nothing on my end.
No, no.
I think like people do little creative things all the time, but it like really
Right.
works like passion for the couple. So like if like for example, like if there's two people who are getting married who are both musicians and they'll play a song together instead of having a first dance, that creative stuff that people incorporate that like actually makes the wedding their own and not just every cookie cutter wedding is like cool.
Yeah. I think I haven't had I don't think it's common to see kind of like what you said, cosplay wedding, where it's so different, very themed differently. For mine, I get like cultural weddings. So, and it's like a mix. So I had one that's Armenian and Vietnamese. I had another one that's like the bride was white and the guy was Indian. So if they try to infuse anything, it'll be just something throughout the reception, or maybe in the ceremony, but nothing major where you go like, oh wow, kind of like your cosplay story.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do a lot of most like I like 80% of my weddings are Indian weddings. So I do see a lot of what you're talking about as well, Tring. I think one of my favorite things about so Indian weddings lately, I've seen like a rise in dogs attending. And they will put their dogs in like little outfits. It's just like my favorite thing ever right now. Like just these beautiful colored like I don't even know what they're called. Dresses basically. The dogs like
Do you guys expect tips from your couples? Is that the norm? Have you received gifts before?
I'm interested in that, Trang. Do you get tips?
Yeah, I usually do. Not Not always. I think it's one of those things where it's nice to have for
Yeah.
sure because the tips are quite generous. Um, I think what I tell sometimes couples is like, well, I know for like the hairstylists and especially in America. So American culture is a tipping culture. I know other countries they don't tip, and what you pay is all you pay. That's just that what's on the invoice or the contract. But I think hairstylists and makeup artists, I think I could be wrong, but it's very normal to tip them. It's kind of weird if you don't tip them. I think even at the salons here, if it's not even a wedding, right? But I think for other vendors, the catering's so much money. Like you're paying
Mhm.
so much money for food that like adding another 20% tip is like
A lot
really
of,
hurts the bank.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where we don't expect it. It's it happens often, but you don't have to, at least
Yeah.
for me.
That's the
Yeah.
same. That's the same for me. It's really nice when it happens,
Mhm.
because we work really hard, and it's at the end of the day, you're like, yay! But I've also had things like I had a couple give me some custom Nikes once, and
Oh,
I was just like, these are my people. Like they're my forever people. Like I'm like, I don't care if you just hired me as your photographer. Now you're my best friend. So cool.
no.
I
Yeah, I
like,
had someone give me a little like gift basket that they made. There's a couple, such a sweet couple, that they made for me and they gave for Christmas, when they first met me in person. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. I love
Yeah,
that.
people don't realize how that we work. It's like, depending, it's like 2 or 6 months out, we work with a couple for quite a while and we see them. And so it's kind of, you build that relationship and,
Mm,
some of them I become friends with, but
yeah,
it's nice because, it's really nice when there's a couple that you absolutely love because you kind of enjoy working that wedding because
yeah.
it's for them. It's kind of like when you're doing it for a friend, you're like, "Oh, I love you so much that like, like I hope you take this and I hope this is for you."
Those are the weddings we actually cry at. And like still, I've
Yeah.
been doing this for 13 years, and there are a few that I'm just like, I'll be a mess. I'm shooting through crying, just tears.
I love that. Has there ever been a situation where something unexpected happened and you had to think on your feet to make sure that the wedding went smoothly?
I had a guest faint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. The heat you learn this with every event I do. I always learn, oh, well, I'm not going to do that for my wedding. When you have alcohol in the summer heat or even the spring, sometimes in LA, if it's hot on a hot day, they don't mix well. And especially because some people, they haven't eaten yet. So it was during a ceremony. And luckily the person like went in the back where I was and they went inside the building. So the ceremony was outside. But like one of the servers saw her and like she collapsed in his arms. And I
Oh,
swear I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And I was about to call 911. I was about to hit call. And thank God she like woke
it
up
was
at that time. And we gave her Gatorade and all that kind of stuff. But oh man, I remember thinking for a moment, I was like, how am I gonna pull this off where I call an ambulance and it's they're gonna hear the sirens, right? But I was like, but the rest of the ceremony and the rest of the guests don't notice what's going on. So that's what I was thinking about. But it worked out. And yeah, so I wouldn't ever do alcohol like during like before the ceremony, I would say, unless there's food available. And there's one wedding where we couldn't find the cake. Like the bakery delivered it, and they ordered. It wasn't like like a wedding cake vendor. It was more of like you order a custom made cake from a bakery, which is what I've seen people been doing lately. And so they just have a person delivery driver, bring it to the hotel. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, where's this cake? The reception's gonna start in 15 minutes. Where is this damn cake? Um, but I knew that it was delivered to the hotel. So, luckily one of the managers was like, maybe it's in the hotel room. So yeah, I ran up. This is why you get a wedding planner because you don't get someone else to do it. So I ran and thank God went into the hotel room and it was there in their fridge.
yeah.
Things
Yeah.
happen. It's guaranteed. I think people expect a wedding to go perfect. But the thing is, like, as a planner and working all these weddings, things are guaranteed to happen, I expect it. I find it weird if something goes perfect,
Yeah.
but it's always minor. And my job is to hide it. So everyone thinks that
Yeah.
everything goes smoothly.
Yeah. I think that's hilarious. That's I think things are like when things go wrong, that's when I work the best. Like I just go into this mode where I'm just like must fix it, and like, like it's usually for me it's things like lighting or timing. Like I did a wedding in where is Palm Springs, and I'm thinking, it was going to be like this beautiful outdoor thing, but it rained. It poured, and you're not expecting that in Palm Springs, and so like the venues are not really equipped for having the ceremonies inside because it's just not made for it. So we had that happen where like the couple was cool getting a little bit wet for portraits, which was awesome. We got some kind of rainy looking stuff, and that was amazing. But we ended up having the wedding, this actual ceremony, in this tiny dark space. And this is when you really need a professional, like you need a professional photographer, because I had to pull out like all my lighting, like all my different lighting to make that look better than it looked.
Oh, I
Um,
know, like the wedding that we worked together. I remember thinking, man, it's dark in here. It's quite dim in here. And I wonder if the shots are gonna be a bit dim. And I saw the photos that you wound up, like posting, and I was like, wow, she makes it look better than what it was in real life.
I think, thank you. I think that comes from being in Chicago and being used to doing a lot of indoor photography, because you just can't, it's gonna rain or snow or sleet or something. Um, but yeah, that Palm Springs wedding ended up just looking beautiful. I had my really super wide lens that I never use, but I have it and it looked amazing. So like, yeah, unexpected stuff. It's fun. I feel like it's part of the fun of being a wedding, for me, for being a wedding photographer, because it's like I get to capture all that chaos.
I feel like we have, I don't know about other vendors, but it's like an adrenaline rush throughout the day. And then once it's over, like at midnight or whatever, you go and eat like a meal, whether it's like Taco Bell or something like that, and then everything just
Taco.
drops. Like your body just not gives out, but I remember, yeah. And the next day you're just trying to recover and trying to sleep.
I love that wedding we did together. Oh my God, do I love that wedding we did together. It's so
Yeah.
cute.
They were a great couple too. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, this is a two-part question. What are some current wedding trends that you're excited about or that couples are loving? And then what are some trends you've noticed that couples might want to be cautious about?
Ooh, I have one.
Go for it.
So I'm obsessed right now with those like imperfect, blurry photos. And so this actually answers both of those questions, because like those imperfect, blurry photos are amazing and fun and like really cool. And they capture something that like a perfectly manicured photo may not capture. And I really love that energy. But at the same time, like when you are looking for your photographer, if you want that style, you need to make sure that photographer also gets really solid photos, like documentary style photos of what's actually going on, and that they're not just doing that like imperfect stuff the entire time, because you're going to miss the point. Like you need to see what's going on sometimes. I noticed that like a lot of like beginner photographers are like super stoked about this trend, because they can just get in and like do whatever, and like but then like I see a lot of people post on Facebook like, these are my wedding photos, I didn't expect this. And it's like, make sure you do that research, make sure your photographer's solid in all the ways.
How many photos do you take in a wedding? Because I don't think people realize how much you have to go through and sift through afterwards.
So I'm currently I did a 3-day wedding in San Diego recently. That was about 30-ish hours of coverage, 30 and 35. I had a second shooter. We took 32,000 photos. That was a terabyte and a half of storage. And like, yeah, they're probably going to get 10% maybe of those, because, obviously like we take a lot of those photos and we gather the absolute best ones. But yeah, it's a lot. It's so hard to go through. It takes a very long time, very, very long time to go through them.
Uh, Trend, do you have any current wedding trends that you like and some that couples should stay away from?
I think things to be cautious about, which I talked about before, is DIY. It is such a beast to do. People, I think, get so excited because they see Pinterest, they see Etsy and all that stuff, but they don't realize professionals make those things, or like you need a whole team to, or you need people to be able to deliver it and then also set it up and then also load it out at the end of the night. So they don't realize until maybe a month in when they're like, "Oh no, this is so much work. I'm so tired and stressed." And granted, I get it. Sometimes DIY is to save money, but I've never met someone that DIY'd and was like, "Yeah, I'm not tired."
Yeah, and to add on to that too, it's like when people are doing a lot of stuff that they see on Pinterest and things like that, like it also is this you, you know? Like, are you being true to like what your relationship is, or are you just putting a bunch of stuff out there and like, like they get so excited about all those little things that other people have done at their weddings, but it's like, what do you want? Like, what can we put out there for you guys, you know?
Do you have a way of making your couples feel comfortable in front of the camera? Like, do you do a lot of posed shooting where you kind of got to get them?
No, so I'm like 90% candid. You know, a lot of the the photos are, well, first of all, I am incredibly awkward. So I think that helps people because they're like, this bitch is way, way worse than we are. They're like, "Mm." So I think it helps that I'm awkward, but I also am like, I try to have them interact with each other and like, pay attention to each other and I'm not gonna like stick them in a pose that they're just gonna like get super awkward in. Like I might kind of guide them into, sorry, I might kind of guide them into a little bit of a pose, but the point isn't the pose. It's to like have them like kind of fall out of that pose and like just like giggle about the fact that that's happening. Like that's kind of how I work things.
Now, on to some relationship perspective questions, since you both are around people getting married. Um, from your point of view in the wedding industry, what do you think makes a strong and lasting relationship?
Okay, so when I see them sort of stressed, it's funny because in the beginning phases, they're not as stressed yet. They're exploring ideas and all that kind of stuff. It's more like the final weeks or months leading up to the wedding where all the details come together. That's when I see the stress start to inch on them. And I always give them a warning to when we start out being like, I just want usually there's things that change the week of the wedding. Someone might be sick. So it's normal to have dropouts. I try to give a lot of people uh, tips like that so they know what to expect. So they feel a little bit less anxious. So they're prepared for it. But I think more so if they have an argument or disagreement, seeing how they repair that, I think is really important because, there's always going to be things in life later on. And if you can repair well, then that's good. And also, I think what Missy you said earlier is them working as a team and
Yeah.
not caring about outside influence because you start to see and I think again, it's one of those things like, is it a thing that comes with age? Where, when I see with older couples that they're like, well, and usually older couples, they might pay for their own wedding too. So it's kind of like, well, we're paying for it and this is what we want. And even though your mom wants this, your dad wants this, we're just gonna stick with this. And they might
Yeah.
talk it out, but you can tell that they're really sure of themselves as a couple.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I think also like when you notice like the couple checking in on each other,
Oh
like
yeah.
throughout the day. Like you can tell that they're not just like experiencing it by themselves. That's part of the team thing. I think that's like the most important thing. It's just like you are taking care of each other.
Okay, has your guys' view on love or marriage changed since being in the wedding industry?
Oh
Yeah.
man. Because we see so much of the behind the scenes and like the planning and the like the structure of all of it, and how like unromantic that part is, you know, like it kind of it. I think I'm a little bit jaded, you know, just with,
Yeah.
but then there's like
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic because we do see behind the scenes, like people will post your photos, but you don't capture the hard moments. You capture the fun moments, the happy
yeah,
moments, right? So that's all people think love is. And that also happens shows in the media too, right?
yeah,
But we see the messiness of it if,
yeah,
depending on the couple. Um, and like statistically, none of my couples have divorced. But I know when I talk to venue managers, they're like, because, they follow couples that they've worked with and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, half of them a year or two later, usually like half of the couples have divorced already.
That
yeah.
quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's either, I think it's supposedly like within the first 2 years, usually. It's usually within the first 2 years. I've had a few couples get divorced. Not it's not 50-50 as far like, I don't know, the last 13 years, I think it's been like maybe like 25%. Still feels high. Um,
It's like you spend so much money and then it's like, all right. And you just, yeah.
oh, and
I,
I've like shared photos that like that, where people have asked me to take them down because they're like, we actually got divorced. And I'm like, oh, these photos were so good. Oh,
awkward.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I also
It's,
wonder with the younger generations, if the wedding industry will actually die eventually because the younger generations either one can't afford weddings or two they don't um care for it.
right. I think it's starting to become a very different thing. And that's what I've noticed with a
Mhm.
lot of the younger generations. They are actually doing more things for themselves with their weddings, instead of doing more traditional stuff. So I think it's just like, I mean, that Gen Z, that's how they are.
Yeah.
They're very like personalized kind of. Everything is like curated for themselves. And I think that probably is good for relationships actually, because they could probably do that together, you know?
Yeah, I'm curious how the wedding industry will change and because I'm starting to notice it, but I wonder
Yeah.
if it's like ever the we'll have vendors will have to pivot and kind of create different packages or plans for
Yeah,
the
actually it has
people.
happened.
Mm,
So a lot of people are adding things like what is it? It's like content creation for your wedding. So they'll hire someone to come in and make the reels and things like that. And I actually started offering that because like why not? Like my husband would love to do that with me, We have the gear for it. So there's new things that are happening. I'm like photography is actually a little bit video is a little bit more important to some people now. So it's kind of interesting to watch that kind of almost flip, like where people are actually spending more money on video than photo. Um, Not everybody, it's still rare, but it's starting to change, I think.
yeah. And when you were talking about jaded on love, I think I don't know how to describe it. I think I wish everyone worked in the wedding industry just so they can so before they get married, they don't freak out about theirs. Like
Yeah,
I know you're married already, Missy, but I'm not, but I know what to not freak out about for my wedding.
yeah,
And I truly know what it means when they say like it goes by so quick. Um I It's hard because with couples, I always think if you're stressed out about something as like these small details, what are you going to do when the big life stresses come to
yeah,
you later down the
yeah,
road? How are you going
yeah.
to handle it? And um I think
Yes.
yeah, yeah, it's like in meetings or something like that when you could tell they're worried about things that I'm like, honestly, I won't
Uh-huh.
be worried about this. Like half my job is playing therapist, or being like that
Yeah,
cheerleader for them. Um, or just reassuring them a lot of times. So that's a part people don't see. But I
yeah,
think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the right word is jaded about love, but I think maybe more
yeah.
of jaded about people being worried about the wrong things, maybe.
Yes, I think that it like you see people taking things so seriously, and it's like It's not serious. It's not that serious.
And it's hard because it is their big one day, but that's just one day. Like you have the rest of your
Yeah.
life to hopefully
That's what's
build a
yeah.
strong marriage, hopefully.
Yeah. It's like that's to get more of like you guys need to focus on each other type thing. Like
Yeah.
I just
I
want
don't
to
know
throw
if I
my
answered the question.
opinion in, even though I am not in the wedding industry. But just from friends and family who I have seen get married and comparing it to what my fiance and I are going to do, that's a big thing. I think people get really caught up in what their family's going to think, what their friends are going to think, and trying more to cater towards them than themselves. And I know when Charlie and I were planning our elopement, we're like, this is our day. We're not doing things for everybody else. All that matters is we love each other, and this is about us loving each other. It's nobody else's business.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you got it right. And it's
Yeah.
hard because there's that people do want to do things for, because in a way, it's hard because sometimes you're like, I'm hosting a party. So
Yeah.
you also want it to be fun for guests, but then you're like, is this what I want? So
Yeah.
I could see how it can be really conflicting for people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think with the jaded thing, like I just think if I so we Jason and I didn't have a wedding. I had a wedding before I was been married before, and it was like it was just like quirky and crazy and all that stuff. And so I know what it's like to build that kind of wedding as well. And I so like looking back at that, that was 12 years ago. Yeah, I wouldn't do that again, you know? Like I wouldn't go through all of that. Not that it wasn't a wonderful time, but it's like we did focus on a lot of the wrong things. And it's like now I know exactly what we would focus on, and that's just us. So we're just gonna, go up on a mountain and like be together and like let the stars be our witnesses, you know?
That's what I'm saying. Like when people have like a second or third, fourth marriage, it's so different
Yeah.
because I think it's just really you're being exposed to it. You're more wise about it. Um, and you I think probably learn more about realize what the important thing or what maybe deep love really or
Yeah.
what really matters. Yeah.
But you know what? Sometimes I think I do see um something kind of opposite of what I'm saying because I will see people like the couples interacting with their families in such a way that's like almost magic. Like they're just kind of like rallying around them, that kind of thing. Like
Some people have great
so
families,
then
I will say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So
not common
sometimes like
though.
yeah. So sometimes I mean just weddings, it's not like I don't like weddings. I love weddings. Love them.
I know
Um
they are fun.
but but my favorite thing is when you can tell that everybody is just like so behind that couple, you know,
Yes. Mm,
like
yeah.
it's I had this wedding once where the couple started just like doing this little they hadn't kissed so they were Indian and they hadn't kissed because usually that doesn't happen at, in front of people. So they had this dance where they were just kind of dancing around in a circle. I don't know what the song was, but it was incredible. The energy was crazy. The family was just they were just grabbing onto each other in a circle, sobbing. And the couple were just like in the middle, like dancing with each other, giving each other like fake kisses on the cheek and just like eventually they just like they did a kiss and the entire room was just erupting. It was a movie, like it was incredible.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. But yeah, I know what you mean when you're like, it just feels right. I think the thing that's great about weddings and also the sort of difficult about weddings are the people
Mhm.
because if you have it's like a party, you have great people that are easy and stuff like that, then it's wonderful. But if you have things like family politics, someone's
Yeah.
paying for it and they want you to do something that you don't want to do, it gets really uh messy and
Serious.
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think, and it's hard because sometimes with guests, I'm like, can you please just calm down? I haven't had really any bad guests, but just again, like, you're not the host of it. Let the bride and groom host the party and do what they want. You can do what you want for your wedding. Okay.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
please, like, let
Like
them
this
enjoy
is
their
not
day.
yours. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you can feel the energy of a room for certain weddings. Like when we were talking earlier, where there's certain weddings where like everyone is teary-eyed,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
so, I guess maybe rooting for the couple, but they're just so happy for the couple.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, Train,
yeah,
remember at the wedding we just did?
yeah,
How the bride was like, she could not control herself. She was crying so hard, she could not speak. And it was so touching, you know? I'm sorry I
yeah.
interrupted you, but I was just like, you
No,
were
it's
there,
okay.
remember?
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny because when people plan, they're like, "I'm planning to say this and all this stuff." I'm like, "Are you planning to cry and like sob in the middle of your speech though?" Obviously, I don't say that, but it's, you know, yeah. When there's like a lot of emotions come up, and you can feel it. Even like other vendors will tell me that too, where they're like, "That caught me by surprise." Like I just start tearing up, and I'm like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
know." Yeah.
Where can people find out more about both of you and your wedding services?
You can check my website out at weddings by Trang. That's TRANG.com. And same thing with my Instagram, weddings by Trang.
Yeah. And I'm at sodafountainphoto.com or just like on Instagram, Soda Fountain Photo.
Okay. Well, those are all the questions. Thank you guys for answering them. Happy late Valentine's Day to anybody listening. And if you're planning on getting married, hopefully this helped answer some of your questions or things that you're wondering.